Really honored to be joined by Jamie Rome. It's a name you should know because he's a storm surge specialist, National Hurricane Center. And Jamie, the word that really headlined everything this week was unsurvivable. So can you just discuss how that terminology is determined? And we're all communicating, so I know you're trying to communicate that hazard.
Yeah, I mean, there is no book for how to handle this. There's no textbook to open up. So the way that sort of came about is sort of the last day before landfall. Laura was obviously continued to intensify and was becoming Cat 4, and it was clear it was going to sustain that intensity all the way up through landfall versus weaken a little bit at landfall. And we were on an internal conference call discussing, from a forecast perspective, what to do. And the duty hurricane specialist, Dan Brown, had made a forecast, and you can't run models fast enough to keep up with something that's changing so rapidly as the airplane is bouncing back information. And so off the top of my head, from experience, I remember, I mean, just, looking at this for so long, I was like, that's 15 to 20 feet of water. And such conditions, if they were to materialize, would be not survivable. And it had a very dramatic impact on the conference call. And it was at that moment that we sort of knew that the power of that word sort of resonated much more significantly, even amongst us, than other words that we had used in the past.
I know it's really early after the storm made landfall. Do you think that had any impact on folks evacuating or taking the storm seriously?
Yeah, it's hard to know. We've heard sort of circumstantial evidence that it did, but obviously you don't know. Evacuation decision-making is a complex phenomenon resulting in a range of different data coming into people from what they hear from their family and what they hear on TV, what they hear from local emergency managers and local leaders. So how much of that played into people evacuating? It's hard to know. My guess is it would take time to really know.
Going forward now, after Laura is now sweeping away and moving away, what's next? How do you measure, or how do folks on the ground actually get an accurate measurement of how high that storm surge got?
It's a great question. Thank you for asking it. Unfortunately, some of the reporting yesterday on the peak storm surge was inaccurate. It traditionally takes weeks or months to reconstruct what really happened. And the best way to help people understand this is I use the tornado analogy. You never see a tornado reported in an ASOS station for obvious reasons, but it doesn't mean the tornado didn't occur. The station would not sustain that force if it did hit, but the in situ observations or weather stations are just too far apart to accurately measure something like storm surge. And we never, ever, ever know the peak immediately after the storm based off stations. It always takes weeks and months. It's a multi-agency approach. It often involves people literally going to boots on the ground to do damage surveys, where you just look at the damage and estimate how much occurs. It also involves forensics, like running a model, and so instead of running a model in a forecast perspective, we can sort of run it in what we call a hindcast, using the available data, try to reconstruct the two-dimensional flood field and footprint, and then make sure it lines up with the available observations.
I have just time for one quick question, and you'll only have about 30 seconds to answer. I apologize for it. So far, what's the one thing that Laura has taught you with this storm?
The gravity and significance of what we do here, and how much it means to people, and how much they depend on the National Hurricane Center and National Weather Service to make incredibly difficult decisions about protecting their life.
Well, you all, 3.5 days out, you had that center forecast basically down right there near Cameron, Louisiana. So we appreciate you all and the storm surge messaging. Thank you, Jamie. I appreciate all your work, and please send that to the National Hurricane Center.